What's going on, guys? I am the Comics Kid 2099. Welcome to day 23 of my 365-day graphic novel review challenge. As you might have guessed if you watched yesterday's video where I talked about Scott Pilgrim Volume 1, today and for the next few days I'm going to be talking about the Canadian manga series from Oni Press and Brian Lee O'Malley, Scott Pilgrim. Today I'm talking about Volume 2, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's around this point that I'm starting to regret saying that I would talk about this entire series because I'm not sure if I'm going to have anything new to say about Volume 2 that I didn't already say about Volume 1. Some of the same things I said about that volume still apply here. The humor is really awesome. There are some hilarious moments in this series that made me laugh out loud. The character of Scott Pilgrim is still the worst part about this book. I still think if you took him out and you made this series be about all of these other characters, I would be much more invested in this series and in this world. But other than that, I don't really know if there's much more for me to say, and I'm afraid that I'm going to keep saying all that every time I review a volume of the series, but we'll see. One thing I did notice reading this volume is that this series is not so much about the plot. If you ask someone to explain the premise of Scott Pilgrim to you, it would be Scott Pilgrim meets this girl, Ramona Flowers, and then he has to fight her 7 evil exes in order to continue dating her. But he spends less than 10% of this book fighting her second evil ex. The rest of this book is basically exploring his friendship with all of his friends and exploring a little bit of Scott's backstory, because in Volume 1 it hints a little bit at this relationship that he had with a girl and nobody will even mention her name. Here we find out who that is and we find out just how much of an iron grip that she has on him anytime she calls him up and even talks to him. So we get to see a little bit of Scott's backstory. It doesn't make him any more sympathetic. He's still the worst character in this series. In fact, the entire first chapter of this book shows him being just an awful person to this girl who's one of his friends, and it's also a little bit confusing because in the first chapter we find out that he dated Kim, who is one of his friends in the present day and was part of his band. We find out that they dated, and then at one point she finds out that he's moving to another city, and then it's implied that that's why they broke up, but then she's still living in the same city as he is in the present day, and they're no longer dating, and she doesn't seem to like any of his girlfriends. It's a little confusing, the chronology there. What happened? Did she eventually move to the same city as he did? I don't know. And I found myself a little bit confused reading this. Every time a new female character is introduced, I kept saying, okay, who is this? Is this the same character that we saw earlier? And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because this series is in black and white that I'm having such trouble with that, because you look at the cover here, all these female characters, they have different colored hair. That's Ramona, that's Envy, and then that's the drummer of Envy's band. I can't remember her name. But it's really easy to tell them apart whenever it's all in color. But when it's all in black and white, it's so much harder for me to be able to say, okay, that's Julie. She's the one who told Scott not to go and date Ramona. That's Ramona. That's Knives. That's Scott's sister. And it's sometimes easy to tell them apart, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know who this is. Like Kim and Lisa, they were both part of Scott's life in the flashback chapter at the beginning of this book. It was very difficult for me to tell both of them apart. So I feel like if you are reading this series in the hardcover color volumes that have recently come out over the last few years, you might have an easier time telling these characters apart than if you're reading the original black and white manga volumes that I'm reviewing here. But that's just something that came to mind while I was reading this. But overall, I don't have a whole lot more else to say. It's still funny. I still like 80% of the characters. There's just one character, the protagonist, that I don't like, and I still think that it's a very enjoyable series. It would be cool if it got more into the plot side of things, but then again, since the plot is basically Scott has to fight these 7 evil exes, I guess there's not much plot there. You wouldn't want an entire volume this size to be him fighting some dude, so I guess there's no way that it could get more into the plot side of things, but overall, I'm still enjoying this series, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to have to say when I keep talking about the next few volumes of this series. So in the meantime, those are my thoughts on Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I hope that you guys liked this video. If you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and be sure to check out some of my other videos over the next roughly 340 days on this channel, where I'm going to be talking about many other graphic novels. In the meantime, I'll see you guys in the future. Have a great rest of your day.